Welcome to the Programmatic Digest, a podcast dedicated to reviewing industry trends and latest news in the programmatic and ad tech world. I'm Ellen Parker, your host and Chief Programmatic Sensei of Ellen Parker Consulting, where we offer one-on-one coaching or a 6-month training and development program in programmatic media to fit you and your team's needs. So thank you for joining us. Remember to subscribe right below and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Sensei's Corner, Matt. How are you doing?
I am great, thanks. It's a beautiful fall day here in New York. It's the best time of year to be here. Sun is shining. It's not hot and humid. It's just nice and warm. And, I don't know. I think we're at that in-between period where summer kind of comes and goes every couple of days. And, fall isn't quite here just yet. So, I've dressed in layers and I'm ready for an exciting Q4 to come starting next week.
Yeah, I'm in North Carolina, Raleigh, and it still feels like summer outside, but it's almost like desert temperature. So it'll get really hot during the day, and then it'll get it's probably an insult to you New Yorkers, but like in the 60s, high 50s at night. And then
I'm all about layers.
Chilly,
Yeah, I know. It's all about layers, right? You've got to be ready for like any possible scenario, whether it be, temperatures. I think the last time you and I had a chance to speak, I was sitting in my office and we had a crazy tropical storm, and then I had to brave the elements, like basically swim home. So, I think Mother Nature is a force to be reckoned with, and, we should all just kind of be respectful of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, you definitely got to be respectful of her. I think I would love for you to introduce yourself to those who may not know you yet. And then we can get into today's conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to. My name is Matt Barash. I live in New York, originally from New York. I've been in the advertising technology space now for well over 20 plus years. I started in broadcast, moved into print, realized that digital was going to be a thing. And, was a big believer that everyone should have a thesis. And so back in 2005, a mentor of mine said, hey, if you want to get into sales, if you want to really understand how to, be effective, you should recognize that success, no matter what you do, is predicated on exposure, leverage, and relationships. Mm-hmm. And so at a point where I was trying to figure out where I should go, and, digital was starting to kind of come back after the bubble bursting late 90s, I found a job at a company called 24/7 Real Media, which had a media network, an ad serving business, and a boutique search agency. And so for someone who was trying to dive headfirst into what I thought was going to be an area of opportunity for the long haul, it gave me kind of the opportunity to check all three of those boxes. So 24/7 was great. We got acquired by WPP. I then went on to join the team at Myspace, third-party business, launched third-party business at Newscorp. Yeah. Spent a few years as vice president of sales at Forbes, got into mobile gaming at a company called Ad Colony, which is part of Opera Software, launched a global programmatic business there, and left. And then tried to be an entrepreneur, decided to go back, had a great couple of years. So in total, spent about 7 years there. And for the past about a year, have been sitting in my current role, senior vice president of business development at a company called Zeotap, which is a Berlin-based software data company, really solving for the future. And when I say the future, it's, the imminent demise of the cookie, it's the importance of first-party data, and the ability for marketers to activate that in all of these channels, which, marketing is just one of them. But that could be consumer journey. It could be how marketers touch base with, their consumers through things like SMS and call center. It's really recognizing that, a marketer needs a one-stop shop to really have customer intelligence at their fingertips.
And does Zeotap only works mostly on the publisher side, or is it both buy side and publisher side? Can you work with publishers and brands? Welcome to the Programmatic Meetup. Yay! I'm so excited about this community that we're building. It's going to be a safe space for media buyers, ad ops, programmatic ninjas, data analysts like you and I, just to come up and talk about our day-to-day challenges in our direct roles, some of our wins, and some of our opportunities to grow, to educate ourselves. Some of the topic of discussion includes anything from optimization, best practice, QA, templating, workflow, operational workflow. I'll have guest appearance. I'm bringing my network to you, and the best part of it is that you'll have one-on-one questions with them. Oh, I'm so excited about this, yo. I'm so hyped. So what to expect in your membership, right? You can expect 1 hour call every first and third Wednesday of the month. Access to all the recordings for the paid members within our community. Discounted one-on-one consulting with me and some of the guests that will be gracing us with their presence and their appearance. Customizable trainings, but most importantly, your best friends, y'all. I'm very excited about this opportunity. This is a community for you and I. This is a community for us to just join forces and really share, just being able to be together in a community. There's so much growth when you're in a community, when you're able to relate to people, or somebody understands where you're coming from different perspective, right? So join today. Programmatic Meetup community is open to you. Bring your friends. Tell your friends to bring his friends, to bring her friends and his friends to meet up with us. We respect you. We love you. We appreciate you. We're ready to support you. So make sure you join the Programmatic Meetup. Thank you. I'm so excited about this. Yeah, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very excited about it. So thank you so much and see you soon.
Yeah, so Zeotap is primarily focused on providing software for marketers. There is a little bit of a publisher component to what we do, but when you look at our business began as as an offering that provided data monetization to telcos around Europe. And so because we were distinctly German, and because we've got a very, very, very serious focus on the sensitivity around consumer privacy and the need for trust, we've built really what I think is best in class tech. And so we started with addressable segments. We then moved on to CRM onboarding and third-party data. We then built out first-party data capabilities. And now we have what we consider like a leading CDP. And that CDP doesn't just sell or doesn't just create an offering that sells transactional data, but it provides really kind of this single rail where we've got an identity business where we're solving for universal identity. And that's where the publisher side of the business comes in, where we work with Comscore Top 100 to give them an alternative to the cookie for logged in deterministic users, and gives the marketer the ability to hit that consumer based on their logins and the network that we've built. And so we focus on 5 different European markets plus India, UK, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Europe is a little bit different in terms of navigating, just because of some of the complexity around around things like GDPR, for example, and really a much heavier emphasis on consumer privacy than we have here in the US. And so it's a great challenge. It's something where I think when we talk here, we read here about what the future looks like without the cookie, or we think about things like CCPA. The American conversation is definitely relevant, but the European conversation is a little bit more intense. So operating in Europe requires a very different mindset and skill set.
I bet. Thank you for the introduction. For those listening, you can find Matt on almost all social media. I know Instagram you're very active with, but mainly Twitter and LinkedIn. So instead of having your typical conversation, and I'm speaking to whoever is listening right now, in terms of like, what's Matt's point of view about the industry, or what's this, or why are we why should we retire the word cookie list? It hasn't really happened yet, et cetera, et cetera. You can probably Google and find those type of information. But since I have such a bomb ass person on the podcast today, and while we were having the introduction call, you mentioned something that really resonated with me in terms of, I think you said something about you worked for X company for 7 years and only like what, 1 or 2 people left while you were at the company because you helped build the department and you basically built that team. So
yeah, I think, you mentioned having a point of view. I mean, I definitely don't lack opinion, right?
of course.
That's that's something which, most of the time is a blessing. Every so often it's a curse. But, I think when it comes to an industry that, it's funny, for all of the hyperbole and all the talk about automation, and this move or this shift towards, programmatic world.
Yeah.
If you don't have relationships and you don't have good people doing good work, then you really don't have much of anything. And so to that point, I think, having been an observer and a participant, I should say, in the evolution of this industry, it's funny because I remember getting online in the mid-90s at the University of Wisconsin and thinking that Yahoo was this gateway to a whole new world. And it was really an eye-opening experience. And so when I went to college, and now I'm dating myself a little bit here, none of this existed, right? And so, it was impossible to be properly prepared for what was going to come my way in terms of a career. And so while my dad might have been a doctor and my mom might have been a lawyer, they went to the same desk every day for decades. And when I started off on my own professional journey, I probably had 3 jobs in the first 5 years that I was out of school. And I started to wonder, is it me or is it what's happening around me? So to that point, I started to think a lot about, the constructs of career development. And what does that mean? And who are the great managers that I've had? And what have they brought to me that had made me want to rally for them? And really, what have they invested in me and what have I invested back? And so as I evolved and matured and grew into management roles, I started to apply some of that mindset. And I started to think, okay, this is an industry where the average employee has maybe 18 to 36 months. At a job and a role. And why is that? And whose responsibility is it to, nurture those folks, help them to really, have, I think, an opportunity to grow, to create some value for themselves, sublet for the company that they work for, but also realizing that, all this turnover and chaos isn't good for it, right? It's not good for driving an industry forward. It's not good for a company that's looking to grow. And it's not good for a manager who every time an employee leaves has to go through a hiring cycle, which is tedious and long.
Expensive. Yeah.
Incredibly expensive.
An investment. Yep.
That's right. And so, I looked at the time period, the mid, 2010s, right? Let's say 2013 through 2017, where so many great companies went through such tough times because they didn't have management that understood how to get maximum value out of employees. And so in the time that I was in Ag Colony and Opera, we hired a lot of people, but what was really important to me wasn't the revenue growth. It wasn't the profitability. It wasn't the amount that we sold the companies for. It was about the fact that we brought people on who stuck around. And that was why we saw success, was because those people realized that I was in it to help them. And that, if they were successful, I'd be successful and we'd all be successful. And so that translates. And so finding a good manager is really important. It's about finding someone who's truly willing to spend the time to get to know you, to understand where you want to go, to explain the industry, to open doors, to help create some of those relationships that you might not get. And it's even tougher these days, right? In the Zoom world, where building those network bonds, it takes a skill set to be able to be engaging and charismatic and hold somebody's attention as part of, a 30-minute window where you could be one of 2 squares in the window speaking at one another or to one another, or you could be one of 30. And so, how do you do that? And I think it's something that we're all learning on the fly. But, the whole concept of really investing in talent, investing in people, I think in many companies that falls back to HR. But I think it's really this partnership between human resources and management to understand what is the mindset. I think the term culture gets used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Culture isn't something that comes in one size fits all package. There's no playbook for it. You have to create it. You have to invest in people and you have to actually live it. And once you do that, you start to see the success. You start to reap those rewards.
So, so what is the culture that you were able to create for the team that grew under you or grew with you? What is like I know that I love the fact that you said that culture is not like a one size fits all. I think it's really important to mention and highlight. If you were a book, I would have been highlighting a lot actually. But like how for a manager listening, for even a team member listening, what can you tell them? And I guess this is two questions. One speaking to that manager and one speaking to that team. Like how can they participate in growing that culture? Because it's not only on HR or on management. It's like everybody, like it's like culture. Everybody has to step in. But how can they feel empowered and encouraged to actually step in and be courageous enough to participate?
Yeah, I think, it starts with curiosity, right? It starts with really, thinking about, no one in this industry, whether it's advertising, whether it's technology, whether it's programmatic, take your pick on which, subset of, we'll call it global marketing you want to focus on, but no one has all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it takes some level of self-confidence to actually ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's really important for, let's start with the manager, right? Managers have to ask employees, where do you want to go? What's important to you? What are your objectives, right? Over the next 6 months or 12 months, what are the milestones that you want to hit? And do those align with where the company thinks that they can grow and grow you as the employee? Mm-hmm. And so how do you create this career development track where, you've got goals for the employee, they align with the goals of the company. And if you achieve those and check those boxes, you essentially level up. And so, there are certain things that are really important to every employee, right? Number one is compensation. People want to get paid for their time and they want to be compensated effectively. And they want to believe that the company is there to help them make as much money as possible. Mm-hmm. So how do you set those goals to be really fair? Secondly, I think what you want is you want people to believe that they've got a future and that they're invested in a place which is invested in them. And so how do you provide the resources, whether that be attending events, whether that be paying for certifications, but how do you give people that investment and that confidence to go out and again, explore that curiosity? Because what happens within, any given company that you work for is just a big piece of the puzzle. Mm-hmm. And the puzzle is pretty broad. And so, if you're an employee, mm-hmm. You should really ask a lot of your manager and you shouldn't be afraid to. And I think great employees, they may have, different cultural values, meaning, there may be certain types of programs that may be interesting to them. They might want to focus on impact. They might want to focus on diversity. Again, introducing things that will help the company to think differently will help the manager to really grow and really, I think a good manager mm-hmm. will welcome that. Good companies will also be supportive of people who want to think outside of the box. And I know that's a bit of a cliche.
Yeah.
But, it's not just about coming in and punching a clock, right? It's about how do you develop relationships, not just externally with the customers or partners who help you to earn more revenue and drive more profit, but how do you build those relationships internally, especially at a time when you're not staying in office with someone. And that's tricky, right? That's like, my wife who has an HR role, mm-hmm. She will always say to me, I'm always surprised at how much time you spend on Slack, reaching out to random employees around the world. on a Monday morning, just saying, how are you and how was your weekend?
Yeah.
And it's those little things that really make a difference, right? When you hear from someone and it's not just, hey, why wasn't that report pulled? Or, hey, what happened with that deal?
Why did the
But it's
campaign
really
stop
about
running? Yeah.
totally. It's about showing interest, right? It's
Yeah.
about saying, hey, like, how are your kids doing?
Yeah.
Or, hey, have you watched an episode of, whatever show, you like? And really just recognizing that we're all humans. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're Matt Barash or you're just an employee coming out of college.
Yeah.
We are all interchangeable. And so you want to be empathetic. You want to recognize that, we're not living in the same work world that we were 18 months ago or 2 years ago. And you want to be flexible and think differently. If you do that, you'll be successful.
If you, okay, so I'm highlighting again here. I think you can pull a lot of things. Like you pulled empathetic. You pulled like just checking in on the human part of the business, the human part of the team. Have you heard of the DISC assessment?
No, tell me.
It's like it's not a personality test, but it kind of is, except it helps you understand your communication style. It's like the D stands for dominance, I stands for influence, S for stability, and C for compliance. And it's just like a test that helps you understand how you receive information and how you give information out. And it's a really cool test, and I've taken a few of them working for agencies, and I can tell based on like your charisma and your energy that you might be a high I, which is those people that are very people driven. They are like the life of the party. Like when you walk into their office, like you can't go straight to business. You have to say, hey, how are you? How's the fam? Are you feeling better? Did you catch this game? And then get into business versus like a high S or high C, I can't remember, would be like, you can't just come and rumble. You have to go straight to like, hey, did you get this report? Not even a good morning sometimes.
I mean, look, there are so many different flavors, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to have a little bit of each, right? I think,
absolutely.
It really depends on your role, and it depends on what you're committed to do all day and how you look at it. And, I think we're all cut from different cloths. And so, I think for me, I really recognize the value of interpersonal relationships and the fact that, if you treat people like they're resources, you're not going to get a lot out of it. But if you treat them like they are important to you and you build that bond, then they're going to go to bat. And that's where you see amazing things happen.
So there's been a lot of like, I've seen on LinkedIn, I'm seeing a lot of posts where people are like, oh, hiring here, this is a great position, hiring here. And I see recruiters just venting on LinkedIn now, saying things such as, there's no talent out there, or talent is becoming rare. So what's your take on that? Because I have my opinion. I'm happy to share after you, but I would love to know what you think of how this industry is shifting, and all of a sudden, talent is scarce versus like maybe 2-3 years ago. And I know it has a lot to do with the pandemic, but what's just a take on it?
Yeah, I think part of that comes back to the fact that people just don't know how to hire, right? I think that, hiring managers are paralyzed. They really are terrified of making the wrong hire. And so, a lot of that's selfish, right? And it's really driven off of their insecurities, right? Because they're looking for the perfect candidate. And there's no such thing, right? You're never going to find somebody who checks every box that you may be thinking of. And so, when you hear people vent and really, suggest frustration around, finding talent, it's not that there's a lack of talent. It's that there's actually a challenge in terms of people recognizing that sometimes you have to really think differently to go out and find the best candidate for the role that you're looking to fill. And so, when I write a job description, I'll be honest, it's really a formality, right? It's something that I've got to jot down 5 or 7 points to put on a page and post, ultimately, get some people attracted to apply for that role. But that role is going to be pretty multifaceted. And so it's one of those things where you can really, it's funny. You can get to know somebody pretty quickly in an interview process just based on how they tell their story, right? And how they can explain where they've come from and what they're interested in and where they want to go. And you can sort of pick up certain cues or certain bullet points, right, in your head that say, this person's going to be a fit, or wow, that person probably is not going to like just jive with the rest of the team. But you said you've got some thoughts on it. Tell me, what's your take on
it? I think I agree with you. I think that industry wise, I feel like what I'm hearing from you in terms of being a successful manager, hiring a successful team, or training for a successful team includes being able to be flexible, but also being able to be the resource for your people instead of them being a resource for you. And I think this whole time, pandemic or not, I think some jobs out there expect the talent to already be the resource, already know everything about what they're supposed to. And I understand that there's jobs that need experience. I'm not saying that, no, you should train. But whether you have experience or not, there's still an onboarding phase where you have to onboard your employee, you have to onboard your team members into certain things. And there's experience that need to come here and there. But I think as like industry leaders or company leaders or whoever is doing that hiring and picking up that talent is not finding the correct formula in terms of still being inspiring and engaging. So I think if I'm being very blunt, I think we've gotten a little lazy when it comes to onboarding employees, expecting them to guess everything. Like, oh, you should know this because you have X amount of experience. No, it's a different place. I know my shit, but like it's different. So that's
every place has a different process, right?
Absolutely.
And so, it's funny when I hear people who are hiring and they're like, you've got to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
I'm like, you are setting someone up for failure, right?
Exactly.
Because it takes a solid, 6 to 9 months to actually understand what you are like, what you're tasked with doing, how the company does it. What is the space that you occupy today relative to where you were? And, I always joke that in the first 3 months, if you could tell me where the printer is and where the bathroom is and where the Post-it notes are, like you're doing just fine. Right. And yet the expectations from so many companies are really immediate impact. And so there's misalignment there, right? Because if they want immediate impact, then they have to have some really killer onboarding, and they really have to take the time for managers to spend, hours upon hours helping people to, again, be set up for success, to have the resources and learning and development tools in place so that, an employee could be a bit of a self-starter and can do their homework on their own. And, and make it really seamless and easy. And by the way, we're not all in offices, and we probably won't be in offices full time anytime soon. And so, in this day and age, it's tougher than ever. And so, I think some people are really scrappy and resourceful. I know that I onboarded the pandemic last fall, and I'm lucky in that I had pretty good resources. At the same time, it took me 9 months before I ever actually met a colleague in person. And so, again, there's that intangible, not recognizing who that person is outside of, the confines of the Zoom screen, which are tough. And then, there's the inevitable question that pops up throughout the day, right? Where, you're like, okay, who's the right person to ask? And how does this work? And are they going to think less of me if I stop and if I ask them what may be a really simple, dumb question, but it wasn't covered in the onboarding. And so, again, what's the perception to be there? And that's tough. That's a really tough spot. I think the other thing is I may be a senior manager and I may be a highly visible, personality within this industry, but I find it most interesting to talk to the junior people and to get to know, the doers, if you will, rather than decision makers, because the doers are the ones who really understand how the sausage is made, the inside and outs of the company, right? And the partnership or the client.
I call us the minions. Like,
yeah,
I've received some comments about this. So if you're listening, this is the last time I'll joke about it once again, but I think it's a good way to put into perspective.
Totally. I mean, I don't want to be disparaging of anyone. We all start somewhere, right? I was one of that 20 something who had a hunger in my eye and wanted to figure it all out. But, those are the most interesting conversations for me. It's getting to know people who are really trying to figure out, how to make it work. And I can go walk into a corner office and have a conversation. That's great. But those are usually pretty high level and they're pretty contested. And, for me, I'll take a conversation or a lunch or a coffee with someone who's just starting out early in their career and really curious, really hungry, and really looking to make it happen any day of the week. Those are the ones that are really fun.
Do you think there's been it's more challenging to work with multi-generational team members or cultural difference? And the reason why I'm saying that is because I remember a few years back on my resume, most of the jobs, I'm one of the 2 to 3 years, and I've always been super loyal to the company I was always been on the agency side. So I've always been super loyal. And then after a while, again, it happens when the 2-year mark, the agency is not loyal anymore. And I find myself just doing more than what needs to be done because I had either juniors that I was managing or I had my team that I just didn't want to let go. So we all put in more than we were supposed to without the resource or how am I going to say that, the support that was needed at the time. And so when my dad looks at my resume, he's 62, I'm 32. He's always like, oh, well, this is just a different generation. Millennials tend not to stay at a job more than 2 years and a half. I said, no, Dad, I think this is advertising specific in the industry. So do you think it's more challenging or it's more of a blessing to have multi-generational team members on your team? And it doesn't have to be literally all buyers or all analysts, different positions.
Yeah, I think it's such a tough question, right? Because I'm in my mid-40s now. I can say that proudly. And at some point I became one of the older guys. And so, when I stop and I listen to what's really important to employees who are 20 years my junior, that value set is remarkably different. And it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's about, what's important to you, at that moment in time. So, whereas I grew up watching movies like Wall Street, listening to Gordon Gekko talk about greed is good. A lot of the younger colleagues I have, people who I've worked with over the past, 5 years or so, they're cut from a very different cloth. And, they want to change the world. And they want to make the world a very different, better place. And so, whereas when I entered into all of this, it was about making as much money as you can, and really, just bankrolling, right? And I'm not saying that's not important. It's important. But I think that now the world is a little bit more complicated. And, as the world becomes a little bit more complicated, you have to be, I'm going to use a word that my wife makes fun of me for being critical of her for using all the time, but it's thoughtful, right? My wife is a very senior HR executive in the agency world. And she always talks about how it's important to be thoughtful to your colleagues and your employees and recognize what drives them, what are the important moments or points for them, and what are going to be the points of satisfaction that will make their work experience better. And that may not align with what's important to me, but it's about designing around the happy medium, right? Where is that point of intersection? And so, maybe some of that's generational. Maybe it's just, a byproduct of the world that we live in today and some of the changes we've seen in society over the past couple of years. But I think, if you can figure it out, and you can find people around you who realize that diversity of thought is a really, really good thing and it's not a hindrance, that's what you want to gravitate towards. You want to find people who they don't want a bunch of people who are doers and who will just punch a clock and who will come in and, not express an opinion or a thought or make a suggestion. But you want to find people who will bring it all, right? And they will come to the table with ideas and want, to leverage the company to create a better mindset and a better world, right? And if you can create a better world, and sometimes that's driven by financial incentive, sometimes it's just, what that service might provide or what that capability might provide, then everybody can win.
I think it's a good way to end the conversation before our closing segment. And this is the last question before it. If you had to kind of recap, if somebody had to stop listening to the podcast right now in this instance, what are 2 to 3 things they need to remember from our conversation?
I'm going to go back to success, no matter what you do, is really a byproduct of exposure, leverage, and relationships. I think that I've used that line for 20 plus years, and I think it always sounds pretty smart. I think that, I'll go back to the relationships part of this, where, it doesn't matter whether you're on the buy side, whether you're on the sell side, whether you're on the tech side. If you don't know who to call and how to put the ball in play, then you're going to be facing an uphill battle. So relationships are really, really important. The next thing is, find yourself a good manager, right? I think it's really easy when you start applying for jobs and you start looking at job description, saying, hey, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. These are their, objectives for the role, but who's actually leading the charge? And is that someone who you can rally behind? And if you can, then, bonus points. And if you can't, maybe it's a little bit of a red flag.
Yeah. That's a good way to, I love the relationship part because I think your environment defines your success, and relationship to people in your environment are one of the things in your environment or one of it. So I think it's a great way to end the podcast. So let's move into the closing segment. And before we close, for real, can you tell us one fun thing about yourself?
God, one fun thing about myself. Okay, I'm a diehard New York Mets fan who in 1986 shivered in the upper deck of Shea Stadium watching the New York Mets win the World Series.
No way.
It's been 35 years since that Game 7 October night, and it's been all downhill since. So, you can find me on any given night sitting there, yelling at my TV. We are in the end of September, and inevitably my heart gets broken around this time of year as I watch, the Mets pennant race hopes go down the toilet. So,
yeah. And I know you travel a lot with your current position. So I've seen you attend soccer games as well. Are you a French soccer fan?
I am a everything soccer fan. I think minus what goes on here in the U.S. But I just got back from about 3 weeks in Europe and got a couple matches. Had an opportunity to do something that was mind blowing, which is go to a Paris Saint-Germain game and go see all those superstars. And so it was my birthday. It was my birthday wish, and I figured, it's been a year and a half being cooped up and sitting at home and playing a lot of Xbox. And so, instead of pretending to be, Lionel Messi or Kylian Mbappe on the Xbox, we go out and watch these guys do it in real life, because real life is where it's at. And so I had an opportunity to go spend a week in Paris a couple weeks ago, and go be, not that different than the little kid who was shivering in the stands at Shea Stadium in 1986. Except this time the sun was shining, and the sport was a little different. But young kind of elementary school Matt came out to play wearing his best PSG jersey and yelling like I did, once upon a time for players to turn my way, smile, and wave. So,
oh my God,
I think there's the beauty of sport right there.
That is hilarious. And what's the latest thing you stream or binge watched?
I'm all in on Billions. I think there was a rough break there because of the pandemic, where I think they got through filming half the season, and then there was this abrupt cutoff, and you're like, uh-oh, am I really going to have to wait an indefinite period of time for this
What
to,
was the show?
to figure out Billions?
Oh, Billions. I'm not sure with that.
And so, I think Billions just came back a couple weeks ago, and I've been traveling, so I haven't had a chance to catch up. But I did a 3-hour binge last night. I think I'm really looking forward to getting back into that. I'll be honest, I don't watch a ton of TV, but when I do, it's I'm all in on certain things. So I think streaming is like it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because you've just got endless opportunities.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I love and hate Netflix for that particular reason. And now they have this option where you can just, when you don't know, I guess it's a timer, when you're like looking for things for a while, it just pops up and say, play something random. And then you'll click and it'll play something random. I'm like, wow, how long have I been you know what? I don't need to watch TV if I don't know what I'm going to watch. So I need to turn it off. But I'm the same
totally.
Way.
It comes back to what you asked me, right? Which is like, on any given Saturday morning, it's not uncommon for me to be sitting and having, a cup of coffee, a bagel, and watching like some, second tier French team playing, and the game to be broadcast in Spanish. And my 17-and-a-half-year-old blind dog sitting next to me going, like, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you watching this? And I'm just like, because I love it.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of sport is, there's always something on ESPN, or I can always go find something on one of those obscure, channels if you dig deep enough into your cable box, or, it keeps me away from watching, some of those random things, that Netflix, wants me to dive into. Yeah. And yet, it takes a lot of self-restraint to stay away. So, I think, Netflix is a wonderful thing, but,
all of them. Netflix, Hulu, all of them.
Yeah, they're great. We could do another session just on the future of that business, right? Discovery is just so hard, right? Because they're just infinite possibilities.
Yeah.
Sitting there watching. But, these days I'm just happy to be out, going for runs, getting outside, enjoying the fresh air while we can. So really lucky to have our health and the ability to get out and stuff these days. But life is good.
Yeah. Amen to that. So, thank you so much for dropping by. I think I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask. I think if anybody wants to reach out to you, where should they do that? Or how should they do that?
I'm easy to find. I think it's MJ Barash on Twitter. I can be found on LinkedIn. I can be found on Instagram. It's Matt Barash. And, I tend to reply to just about every message I get because, I think it's really important. So, if you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, if you're looking for direction in your career, please feel free.
Oh, I love that. Great. Matt's information will be in our show notes. He'll be on every note for the podcast, every social post. So don't hesitate to reach out to him. Matt, thank you so much for dropping by. This was the bomb. We really appreciate you for making the time today.
Thanks so much for having me. Great way to start the week, and hope it's a great one for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your love and support. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you have any questions, feedback, or just simply want to say hi, email us at info@programmaticdigest.com. You can also visit the website, programmaticdigest.com, where we're always looking for guest hosts. We're also looking for sponsors. So hit us up if you're interested.